Today is August 18th. Thanks so much for coming here today.
My pleasure.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell me a bit about yourself?
My name is Seok. I'm a composer, a music producer, a filmmaker, and theater creator, and mixing engineer, and I do a lot of things.
What first drew you to theater and musical theater in particular?
I've thought about this a lot. I can tell you specifically what happened, then I can tell you what my analysis of that was, and that was, I think when I was in middle school, so grade 7 or so, my sister came home from a trip and she had the Les Misérables soundtrack. So she just kept playing it over and over again, and the music just really spoke to me. Why it spoke to me more than other music, all I can think is that style of music is kind of a heightened emotional, it's heightened romantic, it's heightened kind of everything. When we write songs for musical theater, they have to be for a purpose, so the dramatic intention's a lot bigger than just passing dialogue, for example. So musical theater was kind of a way to be able to write that kind of music and express those kinds of emotions in a medium that kind of allowed for it and wanted it.
And where did you get your training?
I went to Berklee College of Music. I studied arranging and composition there. I went to York Music School, and then I did classical composition and orchestration at the Royal Conservatory of Music, and then studied with a bunch of teachers privately as well.
Why did you choose these universities in particular?
I chose Berklee because it wasn't a classical school, and I didn't want to go to a classical school. York I chose because it was close to home, and the conservatory because I wanted to learn classical at that point of my life, and I wanted to get that in my bones.
How did this education prepare you for your career? Did it prepare you?
Yes and no. I don't like school. I just don't like people telling me what to learn and how to learn it. I prefer to learn by myself. So, for example, when I was at York, I missed a lot of classes in this one class, and I went to the teacher afterwards, and I was like, look, I need to make up for my poor attendance and grades. Can I do an extracurricular project? And he's like, well, what? And I go, well, could I write a symphony? And he's like, you want to write a symphony to make up your marks? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't know how to write a symphony, but I would have learned, and I would have asked the teachers for their help, and I would have figured it out. So, I mean, school is really important for some people. It teaches things you would never learn on your own or take the time to learn on your own. And there were a lot of things that I learned in school that I would never have done by myself, absolutely. And I'm grateful to have learned that stuff, but for me, it's a double-edged sword. So half you get things that you should learn, and then half I want to go figure this out for myself. I think I'd rather learn how to do everything myself and then go to school. That way I can ask the questions and get what I want out of it, what I want out of it.
What inspired you to write a musical about war and its effects on families and relationships?
Mm-hmm. So that's Echoes. That's the first musical I wrote, actually. A lot of people ask me that question, and going back to the very first thing I talked about, what I can say is I like that heightened emotional state, the heightened dramatic state as well. So to write a song about a man in love with a woman and he misses her is one level. Another level would be a man is in love with a woman and misses her and he's going to die soon. And then a man is in love with a woman, he misses her, he's going to die soon, and he's in the middle of a war and he hasn't seen her for a couple of years. That's another level. So what happened when I started thinking about what musicals I wanted to write, I was researching these wars and all these different wars, and I was reading this book of letters and journal entries. And I just read the whole thing. It was like 300-400 pages, and every single story after a while started to sound the same. How the heartache was the same, the pain was the same, how much they missed people was the same. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Those are the kinds of musicals that I want to write. I don't write overly fun, flashy, dancey kind of musicals. Not that I don't like those, but that's just not my style. I go for the real heartachy, passionate stuff.
What comes first, music or lyrics?
I would normally say they come together, but I'll say that the lyrics sort of come first. So the way I write is I take a moment in a scene and I say, okay, so this scene is where the woman says, I'm going to leave the man. I've decided I'm going to leave him. Okay, so that's what the song is about, and then I'll write down on paper on my computer, what is she saying? What is she actually saying? It doesn't have to be poetic, it doesn't have to be beautiful, just what is she saying? She's saying, I'm tired of this is taking too long, I don't want to wait anymore, I have my life to live, I'm wasting all this time, and I write it all down in everyday English. And then once I kind of see it on a page, then I go to the piano and I kind of say, okay, well, this feels like this kind of music, and then I start singing those terrible words that I've written, and then eventually it just kind of turns into a song.
You mentioned in one of the interviews that writing is pretty easy if you know what you're writing about emotionally and thematically. For example, songs Where Does It End and Light were written in a day.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it usually take you to write a song?
Well, like I said, if I know exactly what I'm writing, dramatically, emotionally, lyrically, then it's very, very quick. I also write kind of like an assembly line, like a car manufacturer assembly line, so I don't try and build the whole car right away. I just try and get the verse and chorus and or the main chunk of the song done. And as soon as that's done and I know generally where the song is going, in my head it's done. I don't need to worry about it anymore. Maybe I have to write a bridge, maybe I have to write a whole different section, that's fine, but the main intention of the song is done. So my next musical, which hasn't been released yet, I turned it into a film, it's called What Am I Without You? I wrote that in 10 days, the whole thing. I think it was 18 songs at the time. Script, everything, idea, concept. The next musical, Unraveled, which we just did at the Fringe Festival and we're doing a remount soon, that I wrote in 9 days. And that was, I think, 15 songs or 16 songs, story, everything. That's not to say I didn't take time to edit it afterwards and expand and write more songs and change things, but yeah, the basic structure and the bulk of it, I write very, very quickly. Because I just write a song, it might take me 30 minutes to get the verse and chorus down, and then next song. And then if I'm on a roll and I know exactly what I'm saying, next song, next song, next song, next song. And then maybe in 3 days I have some real good skeletons of 15 songs. And then I'll go back and then I'll expand them to be full songs. And so, yeah, that's how it works.
And how do you write the book? Do you think about plot or characters first? Or
Yeah.
start with songs?
Yeah, no, I have an outline of story. Again, everything I do it's not so much a creative. It's not just I was so inspired and this just came to me, and it does, but very strategically. So, for example, with the book, I have a very detailed story outline, treatment, whatever you want to call it. It might be 5 pages long, and in each moment where I think there would be a song, I say, okay, and then they sing about this, and they say this, and then the scene turns into this, and so the book kind of just comes together bit by bit. So I have the structure, and then I have where I want to put the songs, and then maybe I'll be like, ooh, I need a bunch of book here and a scene here to establish this, to set up that song, or vice versa. I need to put a song in there to break up that scene, or yeah, just then that happens organically.
Do you still believe that it's a 5% creativity and 95% math?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And that 5% creativity is the burst of what I call creative vomit. Everything comes out, you're just inspired. I know for film, for example, I think it was Alfred Hitchcock said, once the script is done, the movie's done. Because making the movie is all that is making that script come to life, but the script is what matters to him. So same idea, it's just that having that creative output and then going through all the editing and all the tweaking and trying to make this fit and that fit and that's all in my head math. Other people see it differently. Other people I'm sure see that math part as creativity. But I think, at least the way I work with the assembly line idea, I separate my left and right brain in that way.
Do considerations of being producible affect how you approach work? For example, do you use reduced orchestration to meet the demands of a smaller house in Canada?
Yeah.
Like, reduced orchestration, like small house in
Yeah.
Canada, or
Are you talking about the show itself or while I'm writing the show?
while you're writing it?
Yeah, I do. I hate that I do, but I do. But kind of for two reasons. One is I need to see it in my head of what it's going to be. So if it's a really small stage and the stage doesn't have great lights and the audience isn't in pure black and the set's pretty bad or small, I wouldn't want to write a big dance number at a wedding. So if it's a grand wedding, I wouldn't want to write an actual song where everybody's singing and it's this big number where everyone's turning and doing a waltz or whatever, because it just wouldn't fit that stage or that theater. Whereas if I got commissioned to do work on some massive stage, then yeah, that would always be in my head. It's a massive stage. How am I going to fill this up? I should have some more big numbers. I should have some more ensemble numbers. I should have, audience participation number. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, so definitely that is a part of the process. Orchestration, yeah, it all goes together. It's all, it's cooking. It's 1 + 1 = 3. So it's not just that you had meat and you added salt. Adding the salt to the meat changes it completely and makes it taste that much better. So when you're thinking about a show and a production, it's not at least for me, it's not just the script and the songs, it's what's it gonna feel like on stage, or if it's a movie on screen. Like even like how are the costumes gonna affect it? How's the makeup gonna affect it? Every element, makeup, staging, lighting, orchestration, how you write it, how you structure it, how it flows from one scene to the next, yeah, will all be influenced by that stage, by the production itself, which I guess is the director's job at some point to adapt it for that stage, but it's definitely in my mind while I'm writing.
So you're the composer, lyricist, librettist. Are you also like an arranger and an orchestrator of your own work, director?
Yeah.
Like you wear so many hats, how do you balance all of these different roles?
I don't know, it's just something I've always done, literally since I was a kid. It's hard for me to also just hand over a piece of work to someone I don't know. If there's someone I've worked with a lot and I really trust them and we're on the same page, or I used to write music for TV shows and commercials, and sometimes we do like Motown, James Brown kind of stuff. And there's this one producer that I know who does that really, really well. So I would oftentimes give my bass track to him, send it to him, and be like, hey, just add a bunch of James Brown, Motown stuff to it. And 100% trust that he was going to do exactly. But I haven't found those people yet in musical theater where I can say, hey, take my score and make an arrangement of it, and take my script and do this to it. So I just keep doing it myself. Even talking to a filmmaker friend of mine, she was asking why I do everything, and I gave her the same answer. And I go, well, you've been doing this forever. Have you found your team? And she's like, no. I found a couple of people, but that's it. And that's why you'll see like Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, they always work with the same cinematographer, the same John Williams, the same composer, because they're just on the same page. And I'm not against trying to find those people, I just haven't found them yet.
When you write, do you use a rhyming dictionary or thesaurus?
Mm-hmm. I have both open on my computer when I'm writing. The rhyming dictionary is funny because, as a tip for younger writers, a rhyming dictionary should just be like a guideline. So I had a meeting with a lyricist the other day. He wanted to pick my brain on how I wrote, and I was telling him how what matters more is how the line sings than how it rhymes. So, you could write a song that the first line ends in no, and then the last line ends with boat or gore. So no and gore, they don't really rhyme, but maybe it sings well, and maybe it actually sounds okay. whereas a lot of younger people just look at the rhyme and go, oh, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. They're called near rhymes, and sometimes near rhymes sing better than a perfect rhyme, and a perfect rhyme might sound really kind of Mother Goosey, hokey. So yeah, I definitely use the rhyming dictionary as a guide and a thesaurus, absolutely. I've had a long career in a few different things. Like I said, I wrote music for TV commercials and TV shows, and that's, I mean, you have very little creative exploration there. Typically what happens is they'll give you a song, let's say it's a Beatles song, and they'll say, we love this, but we obviously can't afford it, or there's just certain things, it's too slow. So we have to write a track and produce a track that's in the style of that kind of music. Obviously we can't copy it, but having that same feeling and same energy and same response from the audience. So you don't get too much creative exploration with that. Same with TV shows. You're kind of put in a box, and you can be creative within that box, but you're kind of put in that box. So, and then I've also produced pop music and rock music and hip hop and whatnot, and that too, you're going for this idea of what's going to be radio friendly and what's going to be audience friendly. So there's this really beautiful balance. I won't even say it's a fine balance, but a beautiful, beautiful balance between having a lot of people like what you do, like it appeals to a lot of people, but also you get to do what you do. So one of the biggest pieces of, it's not criticism, it's not feedback, just observation that people give to me on my work is that I write a lot of ballads, and it's very ballad heavy. Always, it's never a thing of that's bad, it's just that's what it is. But that's what I do. That's just me, and people seem to really like it. It would be easy for me to give in to that pressure and say, oh, okay, my next one, I'm going to write a lot of up-tempo songs and dance numbers, but that's just not me. And I think you have to know who you are, know the style that you do, and just own it, and live it, and breathe it. And everyone is trying to make it in the industry, everyone's trying to get their work produced, everyone's trying to succeed. But I think if everyone tries to succeed at the same thing, doing the same thing, making the exact same musicals, the exact same films, then we're stuck in a terrible box. So as a composer, as a creator, it's really important for me to make sure that my voice is my voice and nobody else's.
How do you find your voice when you're just starting out?
That's a good question. And you know, it changes. Your voice changes a lot. When I wrote Echoes, I was a lot younger and I was filled with a lot of passion for changing the world and human rights and things like that. And as I got older and years went on, it was more about true love and intimate relationships with one-on-one friends, family, romantic, whatever it is. And my voice changed. Musically, it kind of stayed the same. So I don't know. I think you definitely should be exploring, and you should definitely be doing as much as you can. That was huge for me. The TV commercial, TV show part of my life, that was a huge, huge influence and benefit to me and in my skills and everything. Because I had to write pieces of music in one day, in half a day, produced like full-on orchestrated everything in 8 hours, or I'd have to write 16 pieces of music for a TV show in 3 days. And not only that, I'd have to write 5 TV commercials, and they all had to be similar but different and fully produced. And through that, I actually found some voices that I had. I didn't know that the Motown stuff, that I really love doing that. I love doing punk rock, I love doing Motown, I love doing certain kinds of hip hop, I love doing classical music, and I definitely love doing musical theater. I did singer-songwriter stuff for a while as well, and all of this kind of is still there. Talking to a record label right now about doing a Motown type record, which I'm really excited to do because that'd be a lot of fun. And so it's not just going to be this for me. This is definitely my musical theater voice. I don't think I'd probably want to do a hip hop or Motown musical, but you never know. Never know.
I was thinking about the question from your musical. Like, what if you knew then all that you know now? Would it matter? Would it change anything? Like, when you're just starting out.
Yeah, there's one thing, there's one big thing, at least talking about career, and I actually give this piece of advice to everyone, and I'll give it to you too. Be special. This goes back to my know your voice, find your voice. Be special. The thing with me, and I'm gonna try and not sound arrogant, but I'm pretty good at everything I do. I'm an excellent mixing engineer. I'm a great audio engineer. I'm a great producer, a composer, orchestrator, performer. I do kind of everything pretty well. What happened early on in my career, at least with the producing side of things, was there were a bunch of us in the city that were producing music. And by producing, I mean the pop version of orchestrating. Like, we would create records and create songs. But what ended up happening was my mixes, my songs, sounded better sonically than everybody else's. And so, not everybody, but the people that I was around. And so then people started saying, oh, well, I produced this song, can you mix it for me? I was like, yeah, sure, because, I was young, I needed money, why not? I'd do that, and then eventually, I just became known as the mixer. But I was still producing, I was still doing writing, I was still doing everything, still doing musical theater stuff. And then eventually what happened was mixing got too expensive for people and you could kind of do it on your own. So then I would do mastering because my masters sounded better than most people. So they'd be like, hey, can you do mastering? So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll just do some mastering. So I did that as well. But what happened was I never really planted my feet and got known for anything. I was just there. So a friend of mine became a real estate agent. And I said to them the same thing. I was like, be special. Whether it be you're the Asian overseas foreign investment real estate agent, or you're the family real estate agent, or you're the young couples into single person real estate. Be special. Be known for something, as opposed to just that real estate agent. So if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it would be find your voice and just get known for that. And if that voice changes, then fine, then change that voice, but be known for that.
Let's talk about the feature film Incarnation of Echoes. It was screened at the Montreal World Film Festival and the Fort Myers Film Festival. How do you choose where to submit it to? Like, what's the right festival? There are so many.
Yeah, you have to do research. I have a friend of mine, and he put together a list for me, and he was like, these are the ones that are good for you. A bad example would be if your film is about war and so you're not going to submit it to horror genre, the psycho thriller genre. You're going to apply to the ones that actually would probably take it. But also, there are certain big ones that you just have to apply to and take your shot at, which are next to impossible to get into, but you still got to try.
Did anyone in your family pursue an artistic career? Like, how did they react when you told them, okay, that's what I'm going to do?
Nobody did, no, interestingly, and nobody is overly artistic in my family either, which is also very interesting. They were very, very supportive. I mean, it helped that I went to Berklee. I mean, if I just kind of dropped out of high school and said, I want to be a musician, then, maybe they wouldn't have been as supportive. But yeah, for the most part, they were very, very supportive. Still are very supportive. My mother is like my biggest fan and biggest supporter. Every show I do, she brings like 20 of her friends, and so she's very adorable.
What training program would you recommend to someone who wants to make musicals in Canada without any experience, Where do you start? Are there any universities with the best reputation, or I don't know?
I don't know. I'm a bit out of the loop on that. I mean, the advice I can give would be some kind of mentoring.
Apprenticeship?
Yes, thank you. Apprentice or even internship. If you can align yourself, like I'm an independent, but if I had a company with 10, 15 employees and you came to intern for me, you just learn kind of how things work. I mean, that's the whole point of it. You learn so much that way. And I think that's hugely, hugely important. Something I never did because I've always been independent, to align yourself with, to be a part of the community.
How do you deal with pressure, especially since you do so much, nonstop? Like, it can be a bit overwhelming, right?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. I have a friend of mine. She got a full scholarship to Juilliard when she was younger, and she turned it down to go to another music school. So she's that level of good. She's a child prodigy and whatnot. And she and I are very similar. Back when I was also a singing teacher for many years, so I would practice singing before that at least 3 hours a day, maybe 5 hours a day, depending. And that was when I was younger. And I was talking to her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I practice 8 to 10 hours every day on my instrument." And so anyway, a bunch of us are out one night, and this comes up, and I tell everyone that story of 8 to 10 hours of practicing. And everyone's like, "Wow, that's so admirable and commendable. Like, you're so dedicated. You're so self-motivated. You know, wow, I'm so impressed by you. I could never do that." And then she said, "No, you don't understand. There's something different about me. There's a screw in my head that's a little bit different than yours. So there's something different about how my brain works with this stuff. I get obsessive about it. I'm very goal oriented, so I see like, okay, I need to get this done, and I just get it done. And I sacrifice kind of everything. I sacrifice my health, my sleep, my socialization, all things like that. And I have to admit, I've done now, I don't know, maybe like 6 projects in the past 5 years or something like that. And it's now come to a point where like I'm actually exhausted mentally, physically. But here's the part where my screw, I want to write another show. Like I just want to. It's in me. It's like, oh, I gotta go do it. But I have to force myself not to, because I know if I do, I'm just gonna do another project and I'm gonna get burnt out. So I'm trying to really, really hard not work anymore for at least a month and see what happens.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.